theyeshiva.net.
I want to thank Rabbi Muskin Shlita for giving me the privilege of addressing this distinguished and unique conference of Histadrus HaRabbanim of the RCA. It's a schus and a privilege for me to be here with all of you this evening. You mentioned 3 types of dreams of a rabbi. I was once present at the sermon of a rabbi who has endured much agony from his community, to put it mildly. And he stood up and he said that when he thinks about his career, he is reminded of the kapitel in Tehillim, said by many Shabbos morning, kapitel Yotes, where David HaMelech mentions the Rav, or the rabbi, 3 times. Hanechemodim, you remember Hanechemodim, Mizohav, or Mipaz Rav. That's the first Rav. More precious than gold and fine gems or pearls. Then there is B'Shamram Akev Rav, and then there is V'nikesi Mipesha Rav. And he said it's just 3 stages of his career. In the beginning, when the community just hired him, Hanechemodim Mizav Mipaz. Every yachna is WhatsApping about the Rav that we just got. The board walks around proud of themselves, boasting. You heard who we hired? An unbelievable la creme de la creme, idis shebiyidis rabin shel kol bnei hagoyla. There's nobody better. But then the 100 days of grace pass, and suddenly b'shamram ekev rav. They're guarding every step. He looked into the pushka. He did this. He came late. He went on vacation. How did he afford such a bar mitzvah? How is he driving such a nice car? B'shamram ekev rav. And then at some point, v'nikesi mipesha rav. He hopes to be cleansed of all the accusations of negligence as they bid farewell to him for eternity. Every person speaks his heart. Chachem mahu oimer. The famous word, a chachem speaks what he is. I guess he was describing his experience or experience of his colleagues. Tonight I would like to talk about the first Rav, not the nightmare, the Hanechemodim Mizav and Mipaz Rav. And I'll introduce it with a little anecdote. They tell the story about a woman who calls up a rabbi and she says to him, I have a major problem. What's the problem? My husband won the lottery ticket for $320 million. He says, that's a problem. Of alle Yidden gesagt geworden. Wonderful. She says, no. The moment he hears the news, he will collapse. He can have a heart attack. He can expire. He can die. He's going to faint. It's a crisis. So the Rav says, don't worry. Tell him on the way home he should stop in the office and I'll have a schmooze with him. Great. Comes into the rabbi's office. Says, Rebbe, what gives me the honor? The Rebbe says, I just wanted to say hi. See how you're doing, how you're feeling, how are you doing in Parnosa? Says, Rebbe, you know, I'm a Kaptzen, Ben Kaptzen. Ben Benoishel Kaptzen. I never made ends meet. My father never made ends meet. I'm never going to make ends meet. I'm one of the people that when they say Utshuvu, Utfilu, Tzedakah, Avirnus, Roya Hagzeira, it excludes me. Rebbe says, well, you never know. I mean, people can, Mazel can turn around. The Galgal can turn around. Says, Rebbe, it's not with me. He says, do you ever buy a lottery ticket? Do I ever buy? 35 years I'm buying a ticket every single week. But people like me don't win. People in Montana win, Kentucky win. People like me. Says, you never know, one of those numbers one day may just be you. He says, let's not fantasize and create fiction out of nothing. 1 second. Some Gentile in Montana could win. Why can't Chaim Yankel, my friend, win? Says, Rebbe, you know what? Let me tell you. If I win the lottery, you get half. So the rabbi fainted and passed out and expired completely. somehow. You have to know how to deal with the good news. Sometimes we have become experts, Jews have become experts on crisis management, 2,000 years in Golos. But sometimes we have to be able to know how to deal and embrace positive news. And here I introduce you to a very strange and enigmatic story in Gemara Masechta Yuma, Daf Lamed Tes Amud Beis. The Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Shimon HaTzadik, who was one of the greatest Kohanim Gdolim in the early era of Bayis Sheni, who served for 40 years as a Kohen Gadol. The year that he passed away, Shana Shemezba, he told his students that he's going to pass on this year. And they asked him how he knows. And he said, every single Yom Kippur, when I went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, Nizdamen li Zakein Echad. Somehow an old man accompanied me. Atuf Leveinim, Lafush Leveinim, he was bedecked and covered and dressed in white. He walked in with me. He escorted me out. This year, Nizdamen li Zakein, Lavush Shchorim. This year, the old man who encountered me in the Holy of Holies was dressed in black. He went in with me, didn't come out with me. Lo yavru yamim u'atim, the Gemara says, Achrei haregel, after Yom Tov Sukkos, he fell ill, and 7 days later, he returned his soul to its maker. And I ask you, what is the meaning of this story? First of all, who was this old man walking in with him, walking out with him, Yom Kippur? Who was the Zakein Echad? Doesn't the pasuk say, read last Shabbos, V'chol Adam lo yiyeh ba'ayel moyed? Nobody was allowed to be there. The Yerushalmi says in Yuma, afilu oison shenemar alein pnei Adam. Even the Malachi Hashoris were not allowed to be present. But suddenly Shimon HaTzadik had a different experience. There was some old man one time dressed in white, and then always dressed in white, and then 1 year dressed in black. And how did that become a simon for his impending departure and his stalkus from this world? There was a magazine, some of you remember it, was called Hapardes, a Torah monthly journal, edited in my days by Reb Simcha Elberg, Zechrono Levracha from Agudas HaRabbanim. And I was looking at old Hapardesim, and I saw a Hapardes that was published in Tovshin Dalet, 1944. And at the end I saw a little piece of news. They would have some pieces of news about the Chag HaSmicha of Yeshivas Rabbeinu Yitzchok Elchana. And its new Rosh Yeshiva, who succeeded his father not long ago, was Rabbi Yosef Gaon, Rabbi Yosef Doiv Halevi Soloveitchik Zechet Tzadik Livracha Rabbi Yosha Ber, and he gave the address at the Chag HaSmicha of the rabbis. And they give there a brief description of the theme of the presentation of the Rav, Rabbi Yosha Ber Zatzal. And the point he made was, he quoted this story, and he asked the above questions. And Rav Soloveitchik explained it in his inimitable style thus. Shimon HaTzadik was the spiritual mentor and leader of the Jewish people. Shimon HaTzadik hoya mishyarei Knesses Hagdoila. He was the last of that great institution of 120 people who revitalized Klal Yisrael after the Churban, who created a Jewish renaissance from Ezra to Nehemiah, Mordechai, Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi. And Shimon HaTzadik, the Gemara says in Masechta Yuma, during his 40 years, things were very unique. Like Kavon Neir Hamaravi, the Eish of the Mizbeach was never extinguished. The right goat was always the Chatos, and the left goat was always the Azazel. There were good signs and omens in the days of Shimon HaTzadik. But he is also the man who encountered Alexander Moigdin, Alexander the Great, Alexander from Macedonia, as Greece began to conquer the world, and ultimately Judea, Eretz Yisrael as well. In the famous the Gemara in Tainis, how Shimon HaTzadik goes out with his begodim and he prostrates himself, and he greets Alexander, and Alexander gets off his horse and prostrates himself to this rabbinic Jew, to the astonishment of his generals. Shimon HaTzadik, with his keen vision, saw the beginning of what will spell a powerful and colossal struggle undermining the future of Knesset Yisrael and Torah Yisrael. Indeed, a century and a half later, the pre-Chanukah events brought the close destruction of Judaism, because most of the Jews were the Misyavnim, were the Hellenists, if not for the revolt of the handful of Chashmonaim and their supporters under Yehuda, under Matisyahu ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol. And Shimon HaTzadik had this tinge of pessimism in him. Now it's bright, but just in a generation or two, things may change drastically. But every year, as he went into the Holy of Holies, Nizdamen li Zokin Echad, he saw an old man representing in the Hashkafa of Rabbi Yoshe Ber, Ruach Yisrael Sove, the spirit of the ancient energy of Knesset Yisrael, of the Jewish people. And suddenly he saw Knesset Yisrael white. Kashela Yalbinu, he saw it in its full purity, brightness, splendor, holiness, and whiteness. And he came out from the Kodesh HaKadoshim recharged with optimism, with positivity, knowing that Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker, that the eternity of Israel is indeed intact. And it happened again every year. When he walked into the Holy of Holies in space, and to the Holy of Holies in time, and to the Holy of Holies in spirit, meaning identifying the Kodesh HaKadoshim in every Jew, he saw whiteness. But one year, he walks into the Holy of Holies, and Nizdamen li Zokin Echad, I saw the same timeless spirit of the Jewish people, and it was dark. Lavu shchayrim va'atu shchayrim. I saw blackness and darkness. And that is how I know that my time in this world is up. Why? Said Rav Soloveitchik, a leader of the Jewish people who cannot see the whiteness, the beauty, the luminescence, the brightness of his constituents is not the person who is capable of sitting on the throne of leadership. To be a Rav, to be a Manhig, to be a Mechanech, to be a Rebbe, to be a Rosh Yeshiva, to be a true leader of the Jewish people in any form. And certainly when you're leading communities, there's one prerequisite. I can't be naive, but despite confronting the reality of the people, I always have that conviction and that Ashkafas Oilam, that Weltanschauung, where I look at my people and I see their potentiality for greatness, their potentiality for growth. I see the Bonim Atem LaHashem Elokeichem, sacred children of the Ribbono Shel Olam. And if I can't see that, if all I can see is, like they always used to say, the good old days. If all I could see is young people who don't care, who are not apathetic, indifferent, all they care is about the Kiddush Club or some other irrelevant or disastrous force, there is alienation, there is apathy. They once asked a Jew, what's the difference between ignorance and apathy? And he said, I don't know and I don't care. I'm dealing with people who don't know and who don't care, and a certain sense of cynicism and despair sets into our heart. We may manually and robotically do the job. We may give our shir daf yomi, show up 6:30 for Shachris, give the drasha, do our counseling, show up at every simcha. We do our duties, but inside, and only you and I know this, and God knows this, and maybe your wife knows it, and your shriga probably knows it. Deep inside, there's a feeling of cynicism. And the cynicism is justified by so many facts. Said the Rav, this person can't be a Kohen Gadol. He told his students, I'm sorry, I can't continue in this job. My soul belongs to be elsewhere. It belongs to be in the Olam HaElyon, in the Olam HaEmes, in the Olam Shekulai Toiv, because I can't identify that in the people. And perhaps, and maybe it's not said often enough, the Rav, is it a dream job or not? When one wakes up in the morning, can I think about it in the sense that I was given the mission and the opportunity from the Creator of the world to do one thing, to be there for His children. If I don't love Jews, if I don't see them as God's precious children, or as the Baal Shem Tov said, Hashem loves every Jew more than a father and a mother love a ben Yachid who was born at old age where the love is infinite. And the Zohar says in Parashat Shmos, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, if a Jew would know how much the Rebbeinu Shalom loves him or her, he would chase God faster and with more passion than a lioness chases her prey. I don't know if any of you went to Kruger's National Park and saw a lioness in action, at least National Geographic perhaps. But you don't want to get in between the lioness and the gazelle, for everybody's sake. He said, you would run faster after Hashem, knowing that love, if I could recognize the preciousness of every single one of my constituents, every one of my members, every one of my Talmidim, every child, every young man, every young woman, from all ages and from all spectrums and from all backgrounds and from all persuasions, I could see the whiteness and the potentiality said thereof, then I am in a position to lead, to teach, to inspire. Some of you remember the name of Zero Mostel. I wondered, why would somebody have a name Zero? You couldn't find a better name for yourself? So I wondered about this. Zero Mostel's name wasn't Zero. His name was Shmuel Yoel. Shmuel Yoel is a pretty Jewish name. He grew up in the Bronx with 8 frum siblings. He drifted off from Yiddishkeit and ultimately becomes a celebrated actor. Wins, I think, 3 Oscars. You could check it up on Wikipedia as I'm talking, see if I'm right or wrong. But I don't know if they have the story of his name. Why did he get the name Zero? And the answer is, somehow Shmuel Yoel did not fly well in Hollywood. I'm not sure why, but somehow it wasn't taking off. So he needed a new name. So he chose Zero. Why Zero? So when I was young, there was somebody in my family who would always tell me these words in Yiddish, and then I'll translate. Shmuel Yoel, du bist a gar nicht, und du wirst bleiben a gar nicht. Shmuel Yoel, you're a zero, Efes, ayin, null, nada, and you will remain a nothing. He says, today, I want to show this person that I lived up to his expectations. So when I chose the name Zero, I chose the name Zero. And I thought to myself, what a lesson in life. If you don't make your children feel special, somebody else will. But it probably will be in a different way, not the way you like it. And if it's true with my children, it's true. V'shinantam levonecha elu hatalmidim. Rebbe Elchanan Wasserman, Hashem Yinkom Dameh, Rosh Yeshiva of Baranovich, Talmud of the Chofetz Chaim, Talmud of Volozhin, once asked, he said, if the Sifri says that levonecha doesn't mean your children, your biological children, it means your students, which may include your biological children. But it's a mitzvah on a person to teach students. And Rashi brings it on the pasuk. Why couldn't the pasuk say V'shinantam l'talmidecha? And Rebbe Elchanan said, you would miss the point. What the Torah is trying to say is, if you want to be successful with your students, it will only happen if you see them as your children. If it would have said V'shinantam l'talmidecha, you would have never got this message. You would have got a message. You have to teach your talmidim. What the Torah wants to say is, no, you have to teach your children. Say Chazal, who are these children I'm talking about? Elu hatalmidim. When my people feel that I believe in them, I see what exists in them in a way that perhaps they don't see it, I am capable of leading, and they are far more likely to be true recipients, to be true students. But it's not only the rabbi who has to be able, as the Kohen Gadol, to see whiteness. The Rav's function and purpose is to help people see this whiteness within themselves, the way they see themselves. Rabbi Julie Berman, Rabbi Yehuda Berman, once shared with me powerful idea he heard at a convention of Mizrahi, Hapoel HaMizrahi in Atlantic City, 1961 or 62. I think Tovshin Chav Beis, the end of 61. And Rabbi Yoshe spoke, and he shared with me a gewaldige word that he said then. I believe it was printed afterwards in Yiddish, in 4 drushes, and in Hebrew, in Chumash drushes. But the Yiddish was the original language that he used then. Fascinating question. We all know the word vidui means confession. Everybody is familiar with the vidui avoinus, the vidui of Yom Kippur, just had an acharei mois, v'hisvadu alav. But there's one exception. The Mishnah in Soita, Meiser Sheni, Gemara, Halacha, identifies a vidui called vidui meiser in Parshas Kisaveh. What is vidui meiser? Twice in the Shemitah, the Jew, Erev Pesach, or the end of Pesach, stood up and he confessed. You know what he confessed? He said as follows: Biyarti hakodesh ben abayis. I removed all the sacred food from my home. I gave it to the Levi, to the Ger, to the Yosem, to the Almona. Asisi kechoil asher tzivisoni. I did, God, I did everything you told me. Lo yachalti biyoini mimenu, lo biyarti mimenu betome, lo yavarti mimitzvaysecha, v'lo yishachachti. Asisi kechoil asher tzivisoni. I forgot nothing. I did everything impeccable and flawless. Now, hashkifa moin kachcha ben hashemayim. Asks the Sefarnoi, that's vidui? That's confession? Imagine you come home from the convention and you sit down with your wife and she says, "No, what's going on in your life?" And you say, "I have a confession to make." And her ears perk up. She's been married for 32 years. You never said you're making a confession. Wow. And you know, a rabbinic confession is not simple. And you look at her and she says, "What's this confession?" And she's saying, "The confession I wanted to share with you that I am the most amazing husband, father, and human being in the world. In fact, I am impeccable. I am flawless. I never forget a thing you ask me for, and I follow every request and instruction. Now, hashkifa, uvarich, would you give me a delicious dinner and be here for me the way I need to be?" I'm not analyzing if you're normal or insane. You'll ask your therapist. But one thing I know, a confession, it's not. This is a confession. I did everything to the T. I am perfect. Now bless us. This is vidui. Das is a vidui. Halazeh vidui kare. Rabbi Yoshe said something very powerful, extraordinary insight, which probably is one of the key vital messages every rabbi, every rav, every mechanech, probably every parent has to know today, especially people in positions of leadership who have the ability and the schus to inspire so many. He said as follows: confession is based on accountability. Accountability, for it to be sincere and genuine, must be based on the recognition of the greatness of a human being. In the words of Shir Hashirim, Shchoirani v'nava. I may have darkness in me, but v'nava, I'm also beautiful. What this means is as follows. If I look at myself, and I tell you, many people walk around with this inner feeling today. I'm not going to psychoanalyze our generation and our youth, but from my encounters with hundreds, nay thousands of young men and women, from all stripes and colors within the Jewish community, there is a certain inner, very deep sense of worthlessness that many people carry. It's expressed in one way or another way, but the common denominator is, I'm a shmata, and God certainly loathes me and despises me. And now I ask you a question. If I'm sitting at a dinner, and you're eating chocolate mousse cake, and you decide to smear some of the chocolate on my shirt, and then somebody else pours a coffee on my shirt. At this point, getting the shirt a little more dirty will not be very dramatic. If I smell and I'm dirty, it remains that way. If I'm clean, if my shirt is pressed beautifully and there's a little stain, I identify it and I'm not going to get rid of it. When somebody looks in the mirror and what they feel about themselves is, I'm dirty, I'm filthy, I'm uninspired, I couldn't care less about anything. Why should I even notice a stain? I am the stain. Who notices a stain? There's no vidui. There's no sincere vidui. It's like when a husband and a wife are arguing and she says, you made a mistake, and he gets upset and he says, I always make mistakes. In fact, I never did anything right in our entire marriage. You're always right, I'm always wrong. You have seen those couples in your office. You're always right, I'm always wrong. It sounds good, but he's not confessing. Somebody who says, you're always right and I'm always wrong is really saying, you're impossible to please. I'm not wrong. A real confession means, I'm not always wrong. I made a mistake, and I'm sorry for it. It goes even more than this. For me to really confess, I have to be able to take responsibility. For me to be able to take responsibility, I have to believe that I am the master of my own life. I'm not a victim. I can't blame my mother, my father, my Rabbi, my teacher, my rabbi, my community, my shul, my counselor, my shviger, my shver, my company, Google, Trump, Hillary, North Korea, South Korea, for all of my problems. They say there was once a guy who comes to a bar and he orders a cup of Crown Royal, and he downs the cup and he takes the glass and he throws it at the bartender. What's this? He says, I have this uncontrollable rage. My father was an addict. My mother was a codependent. And I just have this horrible anger. I'm embarrassed. I'm sorry. Okay, he forgives him. The next night, he orders again, cup of Blue Label, finishes it, whack, on the bartender's face. What now? He says, I have this uncontrollable anger, and I'm so angry, and I'm so embarrassed with myself. I want to bury myself from shame. And it's because of a dysfunctional childhood. I was abused, and I'm not a person. And I'm very embarrassed. The next night, there's Elba Maisa. Says, listen, enough with your shame and you go to therapy. You don't go to therapy, I call the police. He disappears. He comes back 8 months later, orders a glass of vodka or liquor, finishes the glass, and throws it right at the bartender's face. He says, what now? So I went to therapy, and I'm not embarrassed anymore. For a person to be able to be accountable, the person has to be able to feel that they have power, they have autonomy, they have independence, that the divine core within them is capable of transcending the pain and the anguish that I endured. This doesn't mean that the person hasn't suffered, but it means that the person's soul is more powerful than any other factor in the world. If I can't recognize my beauty, I can't recognize my mistakes and make a meaningful change. Nor can I believe that my future will be any different. Said Rabbi Yashaber, without vidui meiser, there can't be any other vidui. If a person can't stand up to God and say, I'm good, I'm beautiful, Nava, there's holiness in me, there's infinity in me, there's divine splendor in me, then there can't be any other meaningful vidui. Where did the Rambam put the principles of Pietra, a free choice? He put them in Hilchis Tshuva. Pietra is the prerequisite for all Taryag mitzvahs. If there's no Pietra, there's no point of Schar v'Oinish. But he put it in Hilchis Tshuva. Why? Because I know it's late, but I'll say a little bit of a briske vart, if I may. Because with all other mitzvahs, the relationship between Pietra and the mitzvah is a prerequisite of the mitzvah, but it's not the geder of the mitzvah. The geder of blowing shofar is blowing or hearing shofar. Shaking lulav is shaking lulav. Putting on tefillin or keeping Shabbos is putting on tefillin and keeping Shabbos. If there's no free choice, these are not meaningful actions because I'm just compelled by predeterminism. So Pietra is the prerequisite to the idea that the human being gets credit for his or her choices. By tshuva, bechira is not only a prerequisite. Bechira is the definition of tshuva. What does tshuva mean? Tshuva is the deep acknowledgement that I am a person who makes choices. That I am not a slave to compulsion. That I am not a victim to instincts and habits and negativity, even if they exist. That there's a core in me that remains free. It's not just without bechira, tshuva is not meaningful. It's robotic. The definition of tshuva is the recognition of the infinite greatness of man. In his words then, in the Rav's words, real vidui has two components that are integral. Bitul hayesh and gadlus hayesh. The ability to be vulnerable and the ability to acknowledge the true greatness that lay in my core, so I could even notice the stain. That's why it's interesting, before we get to the season of Elul and Tishrei, where we don't stop with Dal Chetz, with the confessions, first we read Kisavoy, which is Vidui Meiser. If you don't go through the Vidui Meiser, it's very hard to go to the next Vidui. And this is where the Rav not only sees the whiteness in his community, but he can help each person see themselves from this perspective. And let me say something that all of you know instinctively, but we sometimes don't realize it. And that's the power of gestures, the power of words, and the power of simple enthusiasm, warmth, and ish gefährlich, once in a while a hug or an embrace too. I got two emails, very close proximity to each other. A boy grows up in Gateshead. He lives today in England, and he was 9 years old, and he got for himself a very interesting haircut. He described to me exactly what the nature of the haircut was. I didn't understand, but it seemed like an interesting cut. And he was very proud of his looks, and he came to school the next morning, a 9-year-old boy. They were learning Parshas Vayeshev. And the teacher turns to him and asks him to read the Rashi on the pasuk V'hu nar es bnei bila and translate it into English. And he reads the Rashi who says that Yosef was Oisa Maisa Nairis. He was behaving like a child. Mesalsel Basari was into designing his hair. And when he finishes the Rashi, not realizing what was going on, the teacher says, you see why I gave you to read this Rashi? This Rashi was talking about you. You are this little immature baby who's Mesalsel Basari. And he writes to me, Rabbi Jacobson, I stood up, I ran out of class, ran to the bathroom, locked the door, sobbed for an hour and a half from the public humiliation, and ran home to his father. He comes into his father's room and he shares with him this story with great horror and grief. And his father, he tells me instinctively, looks at him and says, I like this comparison. I love it. Let's take the story till the end. This 17-year-old boy who was into his hair ultimately rose to save the entire civilized world from a devastating famine, including his entire family. The only reason Klal Yisrael lives today is because of that 17-year-old boy who had the courage and the vision and the fortitude to be able to change the world literally. And ultimately, each of his brothers were jealous and envious of him. And yet he had the courage to forgive. And he knew that God sent him to change the world. Son, I like the comparison. You are Yosef, and you will take it till the end. And he tells me it's ironic, but I am financially extremely successful, a great activist in his community. He says a week doesn't pass that one classmate of his doesn't call him either for a loan or for a gift or for financial advice. And they're always asking him, how did you make it so big? Vayikanu vayechav. The wisdom of a father who could have responded differently. He could have said, I'm going to sue that school. I will close them down. I will punch that teacher in the nose. Or he could have told his son, grow up. Go back to yeshiva. Come on. Instead, he took the very story and he allowed it to become an empowering force. But I wish I could tell you the second story ended the same way. Here's another story. A girl who was misbehaving in class, 10 years old, and her teacher comes into the classroom. And some people, I don't know, they're just not pedagogues. They're not made for classrooms, let's face it. Some of us had extraordinary teachers, and some of us had teachers who should have been playing golf. And this teacher turns to her and chastises her for something she did. And at some point she says to this girl, I have never seen a Yetzer Hara as big as your Yetzer Hara. Never in my life. This girl today, 7 years later, is an addict. Her life is in shambles. And I wanted to know what caused it. And the girl says, I wanted to prove this teacher right. We rabbis will never know the impact of a vort, a kind, powerful, communicative message to that 15-year-old whom you see for 3 seconds on Shabbos. As they say in Yiddish, zhalavenit. Don't be stingy with warmth. Don't be stingy with encouragement. Don't be stingy with compliments. I may look at myself and say a word of encouragement is meaningless. But for that little boy, for that girl, for that father, for that mother, for that struggling teenager, for this struggling older woman or man, you represent the spiritual leadership of this Kehillah Kedosha. You represent the chain of Messiah, the chain of Torah. So regardless of what I think of myself or what you think of yourself, we could never be stingy with a display of warmth, affection, empowerment, of reminding people who they are essentially and what they're capable of reminding them how God loves them unconditionally the way they are, but takes pride in what they are capable of becoming. Since I'm talking about conventions and Istadrus Rabbanim and RCA, and the Rav Soloveitchik speeches at conventions, probably one of the most insightful and moving insights that Rabbi Yoshe Ber communicated on this theme, which should serve as a guiding light for every Rav, was his explanation of the Gemara Masechta Chagiga, Daf Tesvav. Tanu Rabbanon. When Elisha ben Avuya, the only Tanu, became a heretic that we know of, is horseback riding on Shabbos, and Reb Meir, his student, is following him, and he counts the footsteps of the horse as he's giving a shiur. Understand the multitasker genius that he was. And he says, At kan tchum Shabbos. We left the city. Reb Meir, Chazor bach, go back. And Reb Meir says, you go back, geographically and existentially. And he says, me? I can't go back. I heard a baskel from heaven. Shuvu bonim shovavim. Chutz me'acher. Return, O children who went astray, but there's one exception. Acher. Asked Rabbi Yoshe Ber the great kasha. What happened to the axiom of the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva Perek Gimel? Ein lecha davar ha'omed b'fnei ha'tshuva. Afilu kafar be'ikr kol yama v'shav mekabel noisa. Menashe Melech Yisrael reigned 55 years, one of the most heinous evil kings in the history of Judea, killed his own Zayda. And you know who his Zayda was? Yeshaya Hanavi. The Gemara says in Yevamos Memtes, Matzisi Megillah Starim. He kills Yeshayahu Hanavi, his grandfather, and he could do tshuva. Gemara says in Sanhedrin, in Chelik, Hashem built a tunnel under the Kisei HaKavod because the Malachim didn't want to let him come in. I thought in heaven there were no Gaboyim, but it looks like even in heaven there's protection, and God has to build tunnels to be able to take in certain people because the Gaboyim won't let it happen. However, we understand that Gemara, the famous Maharal on it, but the point is, suddenly Elisha ben Avuya gets a message. Everybody, yeah, you not. This is Yiddishkeit. This is Yadus. And Rabbi Yoshe Ber asked even more. He said, if you're telling him he's not welcome, why do you have to talk to him? Why do you have to say, Shuvu bonim shevavim chutz me'acher? You just want to tease him? What's this point? By the way, everyone is invited to my chasana besides you. He wasn't planning to come to your chasana. What's this tease all about? The answer is by looking at the same story in Yerushalmi, Masechta Chagiga. The same story with one little change. It was Yom Kippur, it was Shabbos, he was horseback riding on the Har HaBayis. Would he have a better place to go horseback riding on Yom Kippur? On the Temple Mount, he reached the place of Kodesh HaKadoshim. And that's when he heard a voice from Kodesh HaKadoshim that lay desolate. And it said, Shuvu bonim shoivavim, chutz me Elisha ben Avuya. Asked the Rav, who got it right, the Bavli or the Yerushalmi? The Bavli says the Baskel was Shuvu bonim shoivavim, chutz me acher. The Yerushalmi says the Baskel was Shuvu bonim shoivavim, chutz me Elisha ben Avuya. Which one was it? What was the Baskel? The answer, halacha kebavli. The Baskel was addressed to Acher. Shuvu bonim shoivavim chutz me'acher. And what the Baskel was telling him is, Elisha ben Avuya, you're my child. You're my son. The relationship between a father and a son is eternal and unconditional. The relationship will never be severed. Shuvu bonim shoivavim. It's Yom Kippur. You're by the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Come back, my child. Chutz me'acher. Let your self-definition of acher remain outside. One dark morning you woke up and almost a dibuk, you remember that play, the dibuk, came into your psyche and told you you're an acher. You're an alien. You're a foreigner. You're a stranger. You're an outcast. You're the black sheep of Knesset Yisrael. Chutz me'acher. Let go of that self-definition of acher. Keep that out. You are a child, and you will forever be a child. Look at your life. It's Yom Kippur in the morning. The streets of Eretz Yisrael are empty till today. And you decided to go horseback riding. And Jews are sitting in shul, and they see one man on a horse, and they're wondering, who's this gas ruach? Who's this arrogant man horseback riding on Yom Kippur, which is not a deraisa, but it's a shvus, Beit Sedaf Lamed Vav. Before the times of Elisha ben Avuya, Ein Roichvim b'Shabbos, certainly Yom Kippur as well. Who is this man? But you don't care about Yom Kippur, you don't care about Shabbos. But suddenly, from all places, where do you end up? You want to go horseback riding on Yom Kippur? Go to Eilat. Go to Egypt, go to Syria, go to Afghanistan. Okay, go to California, go to San Francisco. Go to Santa Cruz. Was just the Har HaBayis horseback riding. Never mind, there was a good mountain those days before Adrian flattened it, lowered it by 1,000 amas, by 2,000 feet. But somehow your Jewish soul pulled you to Kodesh HaKadoshim. You know, I grew up in the home of a journalist. My father, Zechron Levracha, was the founder and editor of the Allgemeiner Journal. And before that, he worked for the day morning journal, the Tag Morgen Journal. So we always had Yiddishisten in our home. The real old Yiddishisten, it's very hard to find them today. And one of them told me, the president of the Arbeiterring, you remember the Arbeiterring, the president of the Workmen's Circle told me that they had a yearly ball, a big banquet that they would make, you know when? Yom Kippur. I asked you a question. Why couldn't they make the ball Erev Yom Kippur? He said, because then it's a mitzvah to eat. Chas v'shalom. Mitzvah Yom Kippur is a mitzvah to eat. A few days later, it's also a mitzvah to eat. Sukkot, every holiday it's a mitzvah to eat. They tried to kill us, we won, we eat. That's the system. But why couldn't they make it Chav Zayin Cheshvan? Who wants to make a party Chav Zayin Cheshvan? Yom Kippur. Somehow that is how they observe Yom Kippur. It's an observance of Yom Kippur, if a negative one. I once heard from Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, Rabbi Adin Even Yisrael. He was walking to Shul Shabbos morning, and he meets this liberal, artsy, left-wing Israeli professor. And you know, there's no liberal like an Israeli liberal, and there's no left-winger like an Israeli left-winger, because Jews are Jews are Jews. And so he meets him, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Where you going? Rav Steiner says, I'm going to Shul. He was going from the Moshava Germanit, from the German colony, to the Altstadt, to the old city where he davens, in the Tzemach Tzedek Shul in the Rova. And he tells this man, and where are you heading? He says, oh, Shabbos morning, I go to the one place in Yerushalayim where you could get bacon and eggs. L'kavod Shabbos, I like to eat bacon. And he says, wow, and what do you do for lunch? He says, for lunch I go to the one place where you can have yayin nesach. He says, for shalashudas, I go to the place where you can have shrimp and lobster. And in between, I make sure to go to the beach to be metaltal dalet amas on the way, to Rishus HaRabim on the way with my books. And Rav Steinsaltz, who's a wise man, looks at him and says, wow, I'm jealous of you. He says, of course you're jealous of me. You go to the boring shul and I go have fun. He says, no. I'm jealous of you because I see how much Shabbos means to you. I have to say that for me, a religious Jew, Shabbos comes and Shabbos goes. It doesn't always mean a lot. But you, wow! You can't just sit on your couch on Shabbos and read some novel by Amos Oz. Chalila! To just read an Aleph Bet Yoshua. You have to go find bacon and yayin nesach and shrimp and lobster. My dear friend, I'm afraid that you also observe Shabbos. You just observe it a little bit in a different way than I observe it. But you're also pretty involved in Shabbos. The Jew became a Shomer Shabbos. He recognized a truth about the Jewish people. So the Baskel is telling Elisha, you're here. You're a child. You're not an Acher. But the tragedy was that for Elisha ben Avuya, the Acher became synonymous with Elisha ben Avuya. The Acher has penetrated to the very eye, to the core of his identity. And that's why the Yerushalmi says, Chutz me Elisha ben Avuya. The Baskel said, Chutz me Acher. What he heard was Chutz me Elisha ben Avuya. How often does it happen in your life? I should say this to the women. There is what you tell your husband, and there's what your husband heard you tell him. There's what you tell your child, and there's what your child heard you say. And friends, you know, the two are usually not the same. There's what the Baskel said, there's what Elisha ben Avuya heard. May I say to you, there are hundreds, there are thousands of young and old Jewish women and men who walk around and they feel deep down that they are achers. They're alien. Even those who come to shul, even those who dress up for Shabbos, even those who come to Mincha Ma'ariv, and some who wake up and do the Daf Yomi Zvachim Yud Zayin every morning. Some don't do that. But there's a common denominator by so many, an inner sense of spiritual inadequacy. And never mind, we know how to give people guilt. We inherited guilt from our parents, who inherited from their parents, all the way back to the Nachash. The definition of a Jew is if he doesn't feel guilty, he blames himself. And the Jewish telegrams used to read, start worrying, details to follow. But I believe that every Rav in the Jewish people must resonate a Baskel. The Baskel that comes from our Father in heaven that says, don't identify yourself as an Acher. Leave that by the door. That's the back seat driver who says, I'm an Acher, an Acher, an Acher, an Acher. Don't give him the steering wheel of your car, the steering wheel of your life. Winston Churchill suffered from depression. He said what rescued him was identifying his depression as a black dog that lives in his brain and accompanies him where he goes, to the bathroom and to the bedroom, and starts barking every few hours. And he looks at the dog and he says, Bruchim Aboyim. Well, he didn't use those words. Thank you for the bark, and now it's time to move on with life. The Acher has a voice in us because we're not perfect. This is inherent to the human condition. But the Acher shouldn't be the one ruling how you perceive yourself, how you perceive your potential, how you perceive your Judaism, how you perceive your identity and your future. And I want to say something else. You know, there's something psychologists love talking about today. It's called the Imposter Syndrome. And I found many Rabbonim have shared this with me. They feel it very often. You know, as the Rav, he's always the leader. He's always the one who is doing the right thing. Somehow you can't be the one who schmoozes a whole davening. You can't be the one who goes out to drink after mafter, one of the disasters in many shuls. I can't be the one who misbehaves. I got to show up for mincha just because of my job. I can't say today's lazy day, as they used to have in camp, lazy day. But sometimes the rabbi looks in the mirror and says, you know, I know myself, yada inish benafshe. I always have to have the Dvar Torah. At the Simcha, they look at me, I always have to have something prepared. And we often feel that it's disingenuous which is dishonest. Which is why I believe it's important for every rabbi to have a rabbi. Aseh lecha Rav goes also on the Rav. And if I could quote the Kotzker Rebbe, Es Hashem Elokecha Tira LeRabbis Talmidei Chachamim, and the classic Kotzker line is, everyone has to fear God. LeRabbis Talmidei Chachamim, even Talmidei Chachamim have to fear God. LeRabbis Talmidei Chachamim. The rabbi also needs somebody to speak to. If therapists need a therapist, rabbis need a rabbi or a therapist, and it's not embarrassing, because only people who are humble and vulnerable can grow. And let's face it, in the rabbinate there are challenges. There are psychological challenges, social challenges, emotional challenges, anxiety. And we sometimes take things personal. Sometimes we look at certain members differently than we look at other members because their attitudes are different, and we're human beings. And we need people in our lives whom we can be real with and comfortable with and confidential with. We trust their confidentiality, but they are our confidants to work through our own, I don't want to say dirty laundry, but to work through our laundry. And let's face it, Klal Yisrael is blessed, as the Chidah says, Tzibur is a Rosh Tevis of Tzadikim, Beinanim Urushayim. The Klal Yisrael is blessed, as my grandmother would say, Shlemiels, Shlemazels, and Nudniks. The difference is the Shlemiel pours the soup on the Shlemazel, and the Nudnik wants to know, what type of soup was it? One of the most humorous Rashis, although it doesn't look humorous, the Parshas Ba'aloischa. Rashi says that when Miriam becomes a leper, Moshe Rabbeinu davens, right? Ana, Kael, Narafana, La. Why such a short tefillah? Our davening takes hours. Why so? Imagine we could just do Ana, Kael, Narafana, La and go to the Kiddush and Machaya. Skip the sermon. So Rashi says two reasons why he davens so short. You remember? One reason is if he would daven long, everybody would say, oh, his sister is sick and he's busy davening. Dover acher, if he would daven long, they would say, for his sister he davens long, for us not. Stellt sich the shaila, this Rashi seems schizophrenic, he's contradicting himself. If I daven long, they're going to say, why isn't he davening for his sister? In the second pshat, if he davens long, for his sister he davens long. And the point is, the complainers don't need rationality on their side. And if you're a rabbi long enough, there's always that guy that whatever you do is not good. You can ask Rabbi Muskin and he'll tell you a few stories. It's never good. You speak too short, on a kelner refanallah. Rabbi, we don't pay you for such a short rasha. So the next week you speak long. What do you think you are? You think you're Winston Churchill? You're Abba Ibn? Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? That's the drashas. We're hungry. We're starving. 2 minutes is already too much for you. You drive a beautiful car. Who's paying for the car? So you drive an Alta Tranta. It's so embarrassing that the Rav of our shul drives an Alta Tranta. You make a beautiful bar mitzvah. Who's paying for this bar mitzvah? So you make a simple bar mitzvah. Our shul's Rav needs to make a festive bar mitzvah. You renovate your kitchen with a nice counter. Interesting. It's a Yerusha? You don't renovate your kitchen and they come to your house, they say, I can't live in such a house. The chronic complainer you will never satisfy. Whatever you do is not good because the problem is not what you're doing. The problem is him. Some people simply are chronic complainers. It's a syndrome. You know the Var, the Gemara says in Chulin, Lama Nikra Shma Ra. What's the Ra? The Ra is the Iyar, anybody knows the Ra in English? This is a room of rabbis, right? Ra in English, the stork. Right, the stork, yeah. Daya, Iyar, Ra. Lama Nikra Shma Ra. Oimedes beBavel v'roya nevela b'Eretz Yisrael. Bavel, Iraq, is 500 or 600 miles from Israel. Begin had to take that into calculations when he dealt with Hussein's reactor. She stands in Bavel and she sees a corpse, a carcass in Eretz Yisrael. Why does the Gemara chap on roya nevela b'Eretz Yisrael? And if she has such good eye vision, why is she treif? It's a complementary skill. The answer, of course, is Oimedes beBavel. She's in Bavel. She's looking at Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael, you could see a lot of things, but she manages always to see one thing in Eretz Yisrael: Roya Nevela Eretz Yisrael. Those people who could speak about Eretz Yisrael, the only thing they could say about Eretz Yisrael is the Nevela. Are there Nevelas in Eretz Yisrael? Of course there are Nevelas in Eretz Yisrael. But that's all? That's not a description of Eretz Yisrael. That's a description of the bird. That's a trait for bird. Sfas Emes once says, by B'dikas Chametz, we have the spoon, the feather, the candle, and the bread, and we burn everything. Ask the Sfas Emes, why do we burn the candle? What's the sin of the candle? It's a poor wax candle in a time when candles were precious. Candle is not chametz. And he said, I have to say this in Yiddish. He says, Emetze, was ein ganze Tafkid in Leben, is zu gefinnen chametz umetum, is allein a shtickl chametz. Somebody that his sole function in life is to search for the chametz everywhere. Chametz there, chametz everywhere. As the old song, probably you're also a shtickl chametz. Now the rabbi could never take these things personal. We could never develop a holier than thou attitude. We could never stoop down to some people mashagasan. But we have to have the mechanisms to deal with it within our own psychological existence. And when it comes sometimes when we look at ourselves and we sometimes deep down have this imposter syndrome, especially those of us who, let's face it, the Gemara says, some people often tell me, Rabbi Jacobson, I always use your drushes. I say, it's fine. Hagoynev men haganev potter. At least from Kaifel. I say, but Karen not. Kaifel, but not from Karen. And sometimes we look in the mirror and we ask, am I essentially that person? And I think it sometimes helps to realize, they say there was once a Yid who came from Pinsk. Pinsk is a shtetl in Belarus, in Lithuania, and he came over to the Atlantic. And in Pinsk, he was a poverty-stricken individual. He came to America, he decided he wants to become a prominent member, what they would call a Mizrach Yid, a Shishi Yid. I don't know if they still have these titles. But a Yid, a Mizrach person, a Choshev a mensch, a shtikl Rabban shel kol b'nei hagayla. So he borrows money, buys himself a beautiful suit, design, beautiful tie, beautiful hat, nice shoes, comes into shul, doesn't sit in the back. He sits in the front, near the Rav, near the president, and he carries himself with dignity. Enough with the stigmas, enough with the stereotypes. Here I'm going to be a man. Then he thinks to himself, how will he really make it in the shul? He decides, when the Gabbai asks if there's a kohen, he'll become a kohen. A kohen, you get an aliyah Monday, Thursday, Shabbos, Birchas HaMazon, benching, V'kidashta. When you're a kohen, automatically you're an Adam Chashuv. The Gabbai says, kohen, yeah, I'm a kohen. Oh, he gets an aliyah, he's all smiles. Shkoyach. You get a kiss on the right cheek, a kiss on the left cheek. Yishtabach shema, bechavod, brachas, hamshachas, whatever it is. I'm a chaya. After davening, you go by the Rav to give good Shabbos, and he goes by the Rav. The Rav says, Shalom Aleichem, good Shabbos, looks at him and says, Yankel, from Pinsk. Bruchim haboyim, wow, what a nest, you're here. Amazing, but I have one shaila, Yankel. I remember you as a kid. I remember your father. I knew your Zayda. I remember your Elter Zayda. Good Jews, nice Jews, but not Koyanim. Fine Yisraelim. Wie bist du geworden a Kohen? How did you become a Kohen? And he responds, he looks at him, I have to say this in Yiddish and I'll translate. He says, Rebbe, this is America. It's a new country. As ich ken sein a Rav, ken ich sein a Kohen? This is America. You could be a Rav, I could be a Kohen. It works. Shmar li ve'eshmer lach chashina l'goimlin. Deep down, the rabbi, especially the rabbi who is intelligent, perceptive, deep, psychologically keen, Yosef Das, Yosef Machayv. There's a lot of self-doubt. And for good reason. We're human. We have our challenges, we have our struggles, we have our mental, physical, financial, emotional, spiritual, social challenges. And just because we have a certain title or we lead a community, but between ourselves and ourselves, in the intimacy of our bedrooms and of our lives, we often identify that, and it can become crippling, and it can become challenging. The challenge is normal. The crippling aspect, however, must be challenged very severely. And I have found one of the profoundest, I think, meditations that are very effective are the words of Shmuel Hanavi to Shaul HaMelech, when he tells him, Im katoin ata be'einecha, haloi roish la'alfa Yisrael ata, vayim shachacha Hashem l'melech al Yisrael. You may be very small in your eyes, and that may be an accurate description, but the Ribono Shel Olam sent you on a mission, and shluchoi shel adam k'maisai. When I'm teaching, I'm not representing my own ego. If I'm representing my own ego, I am an imposter, and I should suffer from imposter syndrome. I am representing 3,300 years of divine wisdom, of divine integrity. If I'm representing me, how do I have the right to sit in front of Holocaust survivors? In front of people who have been around the block 9 times, around people, some of them who went through tremendous pain in life, and I'm giving them guidance, I'm giving them perspective. But if I know that shluchoi shel adam k'maisai, I have the schus to represent Torah, to teach Torah, to be a channel of Torah, and to be bottled to Torah, to surrender to the truth of Torah. And of course I have an ego. Of course it's much nicer for me to finish a speech and hear a compliment than hear, Rabbi, you said that joke already. Rabbi, you did this last year. Can't you come up with new material? Rabbi, you're completely wrong. Rabbi, you insulted my shviger. It's much nicer to have a compliment. Fine, we have egos. But the ego, again, chutz me'acher, I can't let it cripple the truth of what's happening. That every Shabbos and every day of my life, you and I have the privilege of imbuing Jewish souls and minds and hearts with Torah's emes and with Torah's chayim, with the light, the depth, the truth, the splendor, and the eternity of Yiddishkeit and of Torah and mitzvahs. For whatever age and whatever audience and whatever format it is, whether it's a joke or a story, a shir or a drasha, a sermon or a private conversation, a little cute vart or a shalom aleichem, but that remains ultimately at the core of the communication. You probably remember the vart. It's a beautiful vart I once heard. It comes, I think, from one of the old Bali Musa, the altar of Kelem, or Reb Chasman. He said, the Gemara says in Masechta Kiddushin, that Shimon HaSuni used to expound every S in Chumash. Kivan she'higia les Hashem Elokecha tira, Pirish, he quit, because every S includes somebody else. Kabed es avicha includes your brother. Who is es Hashem Elokecha tira? Who do you fear together with Hashem? Pirish, he quit. Kishem shekibalti schar al adrisha kabel schar. He told the students, I made a mistake. You know how many S's there are in Chumash? We don't even notice how many S's there are in Chumash. Constantly. The first part of Bereishis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'esaretz, and they're all superfluous. And he reached Parshas V'eschan and he was almost done. Amadu Pirish. Shebor Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said, Es Hashem Elokecha tira l'Rabbis Talmidei Chachamim. Shimon HaSuni couldn't figure this out. He couldn't say that Talmidei Chachamim deserve awe, reverence. Rav Kook writes, Rav Ram Yitzchak HaKohen Kook Zatzal writes, fascinatingly, Shimon HaSuni lived in the generation of Oisei Ha'ish, of Yoshka. Rabbi Akiva lived in the next generation, so Shimon HaSuni did not want to take that route. L'Rabbis, anybody. But there's a vart from the Balei Musar, a very powerful vart. And he said as follows, Rabbi Akiva wasn't arguing with Shimon HaSuni, Rabbi Akiva wasn't adding on to Shimon HaSuni. Rabbi Akiva was actually inspired by Shimon HaSuni. And let me try to illustrate this in my own words. For 60 years you have been working on the string theory in physics. You crack the code, and of course you're receiving the next Nobel Prize. And the night before you're flying off to Sweden to become a world-renowned celebrity and personality and be enshrined in books of history for all of eternity. 3 o'clock in the morning you find a slight mathematical error in one of your infinite equations. And you're like, whoops. Do you wake up in the morning and say, Rabbi Sai, Chatasi, Avisi, Pashati, I'm a moron, I'm an idiot, give the Nobel Prize to anybody else? I think most people say, first of all, let me get the prize. Let's get the $1 million. And then, I'm an honest person in my tzavah. I'll make sure to include the truth so I don't blemish and taint the integrity of my reputation as a true scientist and physicist. That's natural. Shimon Sunni spent 50, 60, 70 years discovering the secret of every ass. He found one pasuk contradicting him. What would you do? You do what every Rosh Yeshiva says. Hasta kasha. Next. We'll come back to it, right? One of the most repeated phrases. We'll get back to it. Or when you'll get older, you'll understand. Rabbi Chaim said, nobody died from a kasha. Rabbi Akiva asks many kashas. Tzarechiyun gadol. Shimon Sunni doesn't do that. He says, sorry, my life career was a mistake, and just as God rewarded me for expounding, He will reward me for saying it was an error and separating. Rabbi Akiva watched this happen, and Rabbi Akiva said to himself, if this is a Talmid Chacham, if this is a person who lives with Torah, that the only calculation in his life is truth, emes, and he's ready to bid farewell to his entire vocation for the sake of truth, if this is what Torah can do to a human being, then es Hashem elekecha tira l'rabbis talmidei chachamim. Because such a person you can have awe of, because it's not about him. He is a conduit. He is a transparent conduit for the Ratzon and the Chachma of the Ribono Shel Olam. Such a person you can trust. Rabbi Yoshe Ber Soloveitchik used to say that his Zayder Reb Chaim went to Volozhin. And Volozhin had some conflicts with the Beis Halevi side and the Netziv side. It's not for now. You could read Rabbi Chaim Karlinsky's book, Harishon L'Sharshelas Brisk. And Reb Chaim's shir came with some tension. And the Lomdim prepared the shir, and there were people who were pro Reb Chaim and against Reb Chaim, and they had to give the first shir, and it was on a sugya Masechta Yevamis. Rabbi Yoshe Ber said the sugya of Eilonis. And he stood up and he gave the shir, and it was a Reb Chaim shir, his first presentation in Volozhin, and in the middle, one of the boys who was sharp and prepared well contradicted him with a Rambam in Pirush HaMishnayos, which objected, which contradicted the foundation, the Yesod that Reb Chaim Brisker established. And Reb Chaim, his grandfather told the story that he heard it. As a child, Reb Chaim looked at this boy, thought for a few moments, and he said, Du bist gerecht. You're right, I made a mistake. This shir is batel u'mavutel. I'm sorry, and he went down from the bimah. His supporters were august. They were trying to defend him. They were trying to refute what that yeshiva bacha said. Reb Chaim said, no, he's right. And he stepped down. And this was the great victory for his enemy. The first shir he failed. And they had there the committee of Rabbanim who was supposed to decide, and they said, if you have a Rosh Yeshiva who at the first shir, when he hears a question, he says, sorry, I made a mistake. That's the Rosh Yeshiva you want. That's the Rebbe you want. That's the teacher you want. The one who realizes it's never about me. I am a conduit. And let's face it, I have asked shilas by different people. Sometimes you ask a question, somebody gives you an answer, and then when you ask the heretical question, what's your source? You could see the difference of rabbis. And you'll forgive me for being frank. Some will give this look of disdain, especially if the person is what we call in Yiddish atzugekommen there. They didn't have an intense Jewish education. They're not on par with your knowledge. It's almost that look. Who are you to question me when you know that I have been learning this material for a long time? You barely know the Aleph base. And I tell people who ask me this question, how do you know who to trust? I say, when you ask somebody for the source and they look down at you, it's not a good sign. When you ask somebody for the source, and with humility they say, of course, let me show it to you. Let me explain to you how I got here. This means this person feels himself as a shliach, as an emissary, as a conduit, as an ambassador. Keser Torah, says the Rambam, is munach lakol kol haroitze litel yavoi v'yitel. It's the ultimate source of democracy and equality in Klal Yisrael. You know about the rabbi who was visited by a secular Jew. The secular Jew says, Rebbe, I need to learn Judaism. I don't know Judaism. Rabbi says, come Monday, 8 o'clock, I'll teach you. He says, how much do you charge for a lesson? He says, charge? Mahu b'chinam avata b'chinam. I don't charge. Moses didn't charge me. I don't charge you. Wow, what a rabbi. You're an inspiration. He comes Monday night, 8 o'clock, the rabbi takes out a chumash, puts it in front of him and says, no, start reading. He says, Rabbi, I don't know how to read, I don't know anything. He says, Hebrew lessons, $300 an hour. Now a rabbi, they say in Yiddish, a mensch is nor a mensch, a molda soich nicht. And here I come to I think what is a very important point. And that has to do with the rabbi's personal life. Since we're sitting here between friends and colleagues, I want to point out something that many of us realize, and it's a little too late, and that is our own children. You know from yourself and your colleagues, not you and your brothers didn't always turn out the same way. Having a father in a rabbinic position can be the greatest source of confidence and inspiration for a child, and sometimes a source of agony, and always feeling I'm never good enough. My father gives 4 shiurim in Daf Yomi. As a kid once told me, 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, 9 in the morning, 7 o'clock at night. So you already finished Shas 4 times. Whatever I do will not match up to that. Whenever people see me, what's your name? You're the son of XYZ. Now for us, he's just a little cute kid. What's the big deal? But some of our boys experience psychological turmoil consciously and even more unconsciously. That's why sometimes rabbis could never learn with their children. Some children will resist learning with their fathers. Some of you know this very, very well. Some will say, yes, let's learn, and some will not get close to it. And they feel they have to find success in different ways and different methods. And I say to you, it's so important for a rabbi to remember. You're a rabbi, you're a rav, you're a tzaddik yisod olam, you're a manig Yisrael, you're a amud hayamin, you're a patish hachayzik. But first and foremost, you're a father. You carve out time, every night or every other night, to spend simple, father-like fun time with each of those children. With each of those children on their terms, not on my terms. Of course, I would love if I could turn to my 14-year-old and say, let's finish Seder Nezikin in a month. But I will not be able to bond with that boy. With that boy, I have to do something else. We're going horseback riding. We're going for pizza. We're going for ice cream. We're hiking up. I'm from Muncie. We're going to hike up the Bear Mountains for 6 hours so I could lose some weight. Or whatever it is. You know what it is. You be there for your child. The Medrash Rabbi says on the Pasuk, Vashem Dibir el Avram Achrei Parid Loit Me'imoi. Dibir is Lashon Kasha. You know what God told Avram? Kol ha'olam kuloi hu mekarev tachas kanfei hashchina avaloit ben achiv eine yachal lekarev. Medrash Rabba. The ganze Welt, the whole world, he's mekarev, his own nephew, out of the house. How many of us were tested with this? The teenager, troubled teenager in our shul, we know how to show love. Why? Because he's a Yiddish kind. But our own son who came home with a low mark, suddenly has nicht kein Yiddish kind. Just because he's your son, he's not Jewish? Your wife is not Jewish? Mainly you, fine. But your wife is Jewish. But it's hard. Because your child is your child. Another person's child, another person's child. You can be loving to the other person's child. I say to you, my dear senior and junior colleagues, we can't afford to make that mistake. I want to conclude with 2 points, my dear friends. Reb Chazkel Abramsky once gave a very interesting observation. Why is it that before you send your loved one to a surgery, you don't just call up any Dr. Goldberg in the telephone book? You do research. You find out who is the best doctor for this disease, for this challenge, and that's when you choose the doctor. You interview people who had this surgery and you make sure that he is the best of the best of the best. Why? You don't allow your loved one to go under the knife of a simpleton. You need la creme de la creme. Why is it that I never saw that Jews who are, let's face it, hypochondriacs, paranoid people, many of them. A Jew once told me, just because I'm paranoid, it doesn't mean the whole world is not out to get me. I never saw a Jew abstaining from ascending on an airplane before he discovers who the pilot is. Why don't you call American? Why don't you call El Al, United, and ask them, where did the pilot go to yeshiva? High school, college, university. How many times did he fly? I want to see a video of him taking off and landing. I want to speak to 10 passengers to tell me about their experience with this pilot. I never saw any Jew, even the greatest feinschmeckers, do this. Why not? And Reb Chatzkel Abramsky said, it's not such a profound answer. When the doctor finishes the surgery, if Chalila, it wasn't successful, and instead of calling the rehab therapist, one has to call the Chevra Kadisha, the doctor goes home and still sips his iced coffee, reading the Wall Street Journal, or the Los Angeles Times, or the New York Times, or the Allgemeine Journal, and sips his coffee and moves on with life. Such a doctor, you must make sure that he knows what he's doing. The pilot is very different. If the pilot doesn't know what he's doing, if he's not a skilled flyer, and he's taking me down, you know what else is happening? He's going down with me. I don't have to do research on my pilot, because my pilot becomes a co-partner in my destiny. Where I go, he goes. That's what Rus told her mother-in-law. Ba'asher telchi elech, ba'asher talini yalin. Rabbi said there are two types of rabbanim. There are doctors and there are pilots. There are also two types of doctors. This is the Pshat in the Gemara in Kiddushin. Toiv sheberoifim legehenim. The best of doctors belongs in Gehenim. Now, all of us know what that means. But it also means something else. A good doctor goes legehenim in this world because he empathizes with his patients' pain and agony. But there are two types of rabbis. There are rabbis who are physicians and there are rabbis who are pilots. There are rabbis who get up at the pulpit or get up at the meetings and they can give a beautiful speech and presentation how everything has to be. Maybe in previous days, I'm not sure. I'm a pretty young fellow. The image of the rabbi who was aloof, dressed up in those, you remember those, the attire of the prominent rabbanim and chazonim, aloof, sublime, sitting on top of the kisei hakavod together with the president, not on speaking terms. The rabbi on this side, the president on this side, the shul quiet. Everything was organized and orchestrated to the T, from the Adon Olam to the Anim's mirrors, from the Kaddish to the Mishaberach. Everybody knew exactly the moment they're walking into shul and the moment they're leaving shul. And if the chazan went 1 minute longer, there were nervous breakdowns everywhere. And the rabbi somehow felt the need to carry himself aloof, a little bit distinguished, a little bit apart from the members of the community. There's something to say about that image. But I genuinely feel that that era is almost avar ubatal min ha'olam. What our people need today are pilots, not doctors. They need leaders, people, teachers who get it, who could speak to them, as we say in Hebrew, bigova einayim. Right? How do you translate that? Bigova einayim, face to face, eye to eye. A rabbi who doesn't have all the answers. A rabbi who could say, I'm so sorry and I'm just here with you and for you. A rabbi who can appreciate the challenge, the struggle, the dilemmas, the inquiries, the journeys of our youth and of our elderly, of our young men and of our young women, from all backgrounds and all persuasions, wherever they are as children of the Ribbono Shel Olam. Let's face it, emotional intelligence today is far more effective than a very creative and brilliant IQ. You can, what do they say? Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Of course, it's important to prepare and it's important to give a message. But the most important thing is relevance. Kikarev elecha hadava ma'od. If I can't make Yiddishkeit emotionally relevant, compelling, transformative, if all people can hear from my drushes are alta oizgekratzte vertlach, like a Hoshina after you clap it 5 times Hoshina Rabbah, people today are looking for creativity, they're looking for guidance. Half of them are in therapy. They're looking for empowerment. They're looking to feel good about themselves. Shalom Bayis, I don't have to tell you about what's going on in Shalom Bayis. I don't tell you what's going on about addiction, what's going on with depression, what's going on with teenagers. Not by everybody, but by many, many families. And they're looking everywhere. How many Jews are looking today in Far Eastern disciplines, in all forms of spiritual energy? They don't even know that in Judaism there's an infinite literature. It's the source of all spirituality. I don't know if there was one drasha that the Rav, who wasn't the official Kabbalist or spiritual Hasidic Rebbe, was not. He was the Litvish Gadol from the Soloveitchik ski and the skiing of the Vilna Gaon, Reb Chaim Volozhin. But I don't know if there was one drasha that I ever read or heard or saw where he didn't quote personalities of Chachmas HaNistra, of Chachmas HaEmes, whether Lekutei Torah from the Balatanya, whether Reb Chaim Volozhin, Taka Nefesh HaChaim, whether teachings of the Baal Shem Tov or of the Arizals. Why? Why was it so important? You read Ish HaHalacha. I don't know how many of you went through Ish HaHalacha well and see his pekiyas in the Balatanya Svarim as much as in every Tosfos of Zvachim and Menachos. And it was fascinating because to be a teacher of Yiddishkeit, one has to be able to see the depth of its spiritual relevance and message, which can apply emotionally. I can't be a technocrat. And I think today, our students, our disciples are yearning for the vitality, for the meaningful inspiration of Yiddishkeit. Ramchal had a student, Reb Moshe David Vali, Ramad Vali, and he quotes Amos, Hine Yomim Boyim, V'shlachti Rav, there's going to be a hunger, Le'irav la'lechem, le'tzama la'mayim, kim l'shmayas dvar Hashem. No hunger for bread, no thirst for water, only for dvar Hashem. So Ramad Vali says as follows, the Gemara says, Lechem is Torah, l'chu lachmu b'lachmi. Mayim b'bekama is Torah. There'll be a time, Le'irav la'lechem v'le'tzama la'mayim. People will not be thirsty for Torah. You know why? Every possible shiur will be available to every conceivable audience through websites and MP3s and CDs and English and etc. You could learn Yerushalmi and Medrash Rabbah and Gemara and Rishonim and Acharonim. Whatever you want, you have a shiur. Many of your shiurim are posted online that many people listen to. Baruch Hashem, there's no hunger for lechem and mayim. What is the hunger? Lishmoya es devar Hashem. The Jewish people are looking to feel the Ribono Shel Olam in the Torah. They want to learn a blad Gemara and feel the presence of Hashem, feel God's love, feel the relationship in a davening, in a Amen Yehei Rabbah, in a mitzvah, in a minig, in raising children in Shalom Bayis. Emotional relevance and emotional honesty is not the name of the game, but I think it's where our future is. That comes with tremendous empathy and connection. My dear friends, I finish with this last vart and a story. I know the hour is late. The Kotzker Rebbe said, the Gemara says in Eruvin, when Shlomo HaMelech instituted Eruvin and Netilas Yadayim, a Baskel came out and said what? Im chacham libecha, yismach libi gam ani. For such a wise child, my heart rejoices. Why Eruvin and Netilas Yadayim? Yadayim are shniyos l'tumah, askaniyos hein. Our hands move and touch everything. They are tamei halachically, rabbinically, before Netilas Yadayim. Washing of the hands makes them pure. What does Eruvin mean? Eruvin from the word taruvis, mixed, allows Jews to be socially mixed. If not, I have to stay home. I have an Eruv. I can come out to the Chutzner. You could come to my house. I could come to your house. We could walk in the Mavui. The Eruvim today, you could walk around. You can eat by each other. It's social connectiveness, cohesion, and integration. Eruvin and Netilas Yadayim was the brilliance of Shlomo HaMelech. Netilas Yadayim represents clean hands. Clean hands, reine hand. The combination of Eruvin and Netilas Yadayim is not easy in life. To be able to be socially involved and integrated, but to keep those hands clean and saturated by integrity. That was the wisdom of Shlomo HaMelech. A Rav can't afford just to be Mekayim Netilas Yadayim. I wash my hands clean and I sit in an ivory tower in a spiritual cocoon. That's not a leader. On the other hand, to be a leader, I have to be an Erevin. But when you become an Erevin, you have to be careful. To be together with people, to be there for people, but never to stoop down and to lose recognition of who I am and what I represent, not out of arrogance, but as we said before, as a conduit. And that's why I think every rabbi needs to carve out those little spaces in which you spend time with your God and your soul. I once told a Yid, you have to learn every day. He said, I have no time, I'm an asken. I said, you remind me of the Hatzalah guy who was driving a patient to the hospital, and his friend says, hey, you have no gas. He says, I don't have time to fill up gas, we have to get to the hospital. I can't inspire people. You can't inspire people if you don't have gas, if you don't have fuel. What happens then is we start projecting energy that is false. We always have to come up with good stuff, but it's not coming from within. Every Rav needs his own relationship with Hashem. Es Hashem alekechetira l'rabbis talmidei chachamim. You're davening with Hashem. You're learning with Hashem. Your own avodas Hashem, my own avodas Hashem, in my personal inner life that none of my congregants will know about. It's really not about them. It's about my fuel. It's about my inspiration. It's about my integrity. The Rav of Netanya today is a Jew named Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lau. Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lau is a son of Harav Yisrael Meir Lau, the former chief rabbi of Israel and former chief rabbi of Tel Aviv, former rabbi of Netanya, now succeeded by his son Rabbi Moshe Chaim, whose brother Rav David Lau is the Ashkenazic chief rabbi of Israel. Rav Moshe Chaim Lau was called some time ago by a woman, a young woman who said, Rav Lau, could you be the Mesadeh Kiddushin, the rabbi who officiates at my wedding? He said, when and where? She says, Erev Pesach, Yud Daled Nisan, the eve of Erev Pesach, or the night of Yud Daled Nisan, 2 hours away from Netanya. Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lau tells this woman, he says, listen, if you could have chosen the worst night for a wedding, there's no worse night than this, especially for a rabbi. What is the busiest night for a Rav who has a community? Everybody knows the night before Pesach is probably the busiest night. Between the selling of the chametz, between the shilas about kashering the counter, between finding out if ketchup is kosher LePesach, and if this year bagels and pizza and bread are mutter, and if kinwa are kitnias, and if we could become Sfardim for a week, and all the brilliant shilas that you get as a Rav. And what happens if you want to sleep through the whole Pesach? Could you be Yotze with eating matzah, Hanukkah, or whatever? All the other questions that American Jews ask today. Or if a kazayas is Chazanish, Chayim Noach, Achilles process, 2 minutes, or 9 minutes, or maybe 29 minutes, according to some versions, etc. Whatever the shilas are, it's all the night of B'dikas Chametz. Especially for the kratzes, for the procrastinators, who chas v'shalom will come to you when you set aside time for selling of the chametz, because it's below their dignity. They have to come to you 3 o'clock in the morning because you're the rabbi. And whoever said that a rabbi is supposed to eat, drink, sleep, entitled to dignity, entitled to privacy, that's your imagination. Rav Lau says, I can't come to a wedding 2 hours away. It's just I have, and he has a city, he's Netanya. The lady says, you have to come to my wedding. He says, why can't you get another rabbi who lives nearby? Says, no, it's you. He says, why me? I heard you do the wedding of a friend, and I vowed that you're the only rabbi to do my wedding. He says, could you do it a night earlier? She says, no, this is the only night. He calls her back, and he says, listen, if you could promise me that the chuppah is going to be 4:30 sharp, and right after the chuppah I can go back home, I'll do it for you. But you have to understand, it's the hardest night of the year. I'll come, 2-hour drive, I'll do the chuppah, but by 5 o'clock I really have to leave so I could be home at least by 7 for B'dikas Chametz and for my community. She agreed. 4:30, he arrived to the hall. He walks into the hall. He saw that it's not It's not this conventional Torah type of wedding. It's a Jewish girl getting married. And he sees an elderly man sitting by the chuppah, waiting. And the elderly man looks at him and says in Yiddish, Shalom Aleichem. From wann kommt Yid? Where are you from? He says, Ich komme von Netanya. I come from Netanya. He says, und ich komme von Buenos Aires. I am from Argentina. I am the father of the bride. She is my youngest daughter. He says, Wo bist du geboren geworden? Where were you born? He says, I was born in Netanya. He says, und ich bin geboren geworden in Pietra. I was born in the Polish city of Pietra. Hast du einmal gehört wegen Pietra? Did you ever hear the name Pietra? And Rabbi Lau answers, yes, I have heard the name Pietra. And the man says, do you know who was the last rabbi of Pietra? His name was Reb Moshe Chaim Lau. Hast du einmal gehört wegen Reb Moshe Chaim Lau? Did you ever hear the name Moshe Chaim Lau, the last rabbi of Pietra? And the rabbi who he was speaking to nods. He says, yes, I have heard the name. He says, do you know who was the last couple married by the Pietra of? He says, I don't. He says, it was me and my wife. You know when? The night before the Rav of Pietra, Reb Moshe Chaim Lau, was taken to Treblinka, where he was gassed, together with most of the community of the Pietra ghetto and many children of his own family. The night before, in the ghetto, he married me and my wife off. A small, modest, discreet wedding. Few people were there. The next day they were taken in the transport to Treblinka. My wife and I survived. And this is the wedding of our youngest daughter. Did you ever hear about this Rav, Reb Moshe Chaim Lau, who married us off the night before he was killed? And Reb Moshe Chaim Lau Jr. looks at him and says, my nomen is Moshe Chaim Lau. My name is Moshe Chaim Lau. Ich bin an Einikel from the Pietra Rav. I am a grandson of the Rav of Pietra. My father is Yisrael Meir Lau, who was called Lulik, the little young boy of the Pietra Rav, whose mother at the last moment pushed him out of the line to his brother Naftali Lavi, who would become the Consul General of Israel in New York, who took him with him to Buchenwald and had him in a sack, which is how he brought him into Buchenwald, and he survived the Holocaust, probably the youngest survivor, 5 or 6 years old, from the Nazi death camps. He says, he is my father. Reb Moshe Chaim was my grandfather, murdered in 1944. So this elderly Jew looked at him and said, Dein Zayde, your grandfather, married us off the night before he was killed. So tonight, you will continue and marry off our daughter, the youngest of our family, continuing the work that your grandfather began. And Reb Moshe Chaim Lau said, and now I understood why this woman needed me at the wedding. It was strange. She heard me do another chuppah. She was pushing me and insisting, and she made me do something impossible. But it was really not her doing or even her knowledge. She was doing what she was doing. But somehow the divine providence, the Hashgacha, wanted me to do this wedding to close up a circle. My grandfather, who didn't survive, but was a chain of rabbis, 37, I think, generations. And now I married off the daughter in Eretz Yisrael. We're 7 million Jews. We're close to 7 million Jews live in our eternal homeland. And I thought to myself, at this convention, it's worth mentioning this, which we often forget. Each of us is engulfed and enraptured by the problems of our communities and the challenges and the stress and the good things, the virtues and the vices. Till Mashiach comes, nothing is complete in this world. But I think it also behooves us to remember, as they used to say in Yiddish, Wo mir steht und vor wem mir steht. Where we stand and in whose presence we stand. The Rav is not just an individual boss of Adam who was hired by a shul or by a community to lead, to teach, to inspire, to guide, to answer, and to be the spiritual leader of the community and the congregation, obviously. The Rav, also each and every one of us, stands in the vortex of Jewish history in the eye of the storm, preserving, holding on to the eternity of Torah, to the eternity of the Jewish people, to the eternity of the story of the Jewish people, which begins from Avraham Avinu and goes all the way till Mashiach. And we often don't place ourselves in that context. We see things sometimes from the smaller picture. But when you take the bird's eye view and you could see the larger picture, I think each and every one has to remember the tremendous privilege as history is developing in such a fast pace. And science has taken us in the last 50 years towards such developments that we haven't probably experienced in 3,000-4,000 years. That those people who are oimed al hamishmar, who stand guard to inspire God's children towards Avos Hashem, Avos HaTorah, Avos Yisrael, ensuring, as the Navi says in Yeshaya, Mi'ele ka'oftu fena v'chayoinim al aruboiseyem. Who are these Jews who fly back to Eretz Yisrael on the clouds and like doves coming back to their coats, to their nests? So Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak HaKohen Kook said, there's a difference between clouds and doves. Clouds are moved by the wind. They're compelled to go from one place to another place, and it's not premeditated. The clouds move based on the speed of the winds and the storms. Doves are not pushed into their nests by mistake. They are driven by a yearning for intimacy, for love. They want to come back to their young. And Rav Kook said, classically, there are two types of Jews who come to Eretz Yisrael. There are Jews who come to Eretz Yisrael being driven by the storms of anti-Semitism, like the clouds. And there are Jews who come to Eretz Yisrael, kiyoinim el arubaysehem, like doves who want to come back home to their Shechina, to their spouses, to their children, to their home, to their nests. Two types of Jews. And in many ways, every Jew is ka'ov to fen, whether he likes it or not. Ayid is Ayid. But the job of the spiritual leader is to take the ka'ov to fena and to transform it into chayoinim el arubaysehem, doves driven by vision, by love, and by passion. Thank you very much.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.